Our topic for today is on probability. Now, let's define some terms in probability. When we say a statistical experiment, it is a systematic procedure used to test hypotheses by manipulating variables and observing their effects on outcomes. Note that in an experiment, there can be more than one possible outcome. So, hindi lang iisa. Pwedeng dalawa, tatlo, or many. And each possible outcome can be specified in advance, meaning pwede mo nang ma-predict kung ano yung mga possible na lalabas. And the outcome of the experiment depends on chance. Kahit pwede mong ma-predict yung mga lalabas, still, yung talagang lalabas doon sa experiment depends on chance. Is rolling a fair die a statistical experiment? So let's see. First, is the experiment have more than one possible outcome? Yes. Kasi ano ba yung mga possible na lalabas? Pwedeng 1, pwedeng 2, pwedeng 3, pwedeng 4, pwedeng 5, pwedeng 6. Each possible outcome can be specified in advance. Yes, kasi nga, alam natin na 1 to 6 yung lalabas. So, we can predict kung ano yung mga possible na lalabas. And finally, the outcome of the experiment depends on chance. So, malalaman mo lang ano yung outcome ng experiment until you roll the die. Okay? So, say, ni-roll natin yung die, ang lumabas ay 3. Okay? So, that is the outcome. So, therefore, we can say that rolling a fair die is a statistical experiment. An outcome of an experiment is the result of a single trial or attempt representing a specific instance of the experiment's effect. So, tulad nung rolling a die kanina, ang outcome is, for example, ni-roll natin siya, lumabas ay 3. That is an outcome. Okay? Then, ni-roll ulit natin siya, let's say lumabas ay 6. That is an outcome. Okay? Kung ano yung lalabas dun sa experiment. The sample space is the set of all possible outcomes that can occur in a statistical experiment. So, like in rolling a fair die, ano ba yung sample space natin doon? Lahat ng possible na lalabas. So, it can be 1, it can be 2, it can be 3, 4, 5, or 6. So that is our sample space in rolling a fair die. And an event naman is the subset of the sample space comprising one or more possible outcomes. So for example, the event of getting an even number in rolling a die. Okay? Ano yung mga possible na lalabas dyan? 2, 4, or 6. Or the event of getting an odd number. Ano naman yan? We have 1, 3, or 5. Or the event of getting a prime number. So, ang mga possible naman dyan ay 2, 3, and 5. Okay? So, yun yung tinatawag nating event. We now formally define what is a probability. Probability is a measure of the likelihood that a particular event will occur. So, ano ba yung chance na mangyari ang isang bagay? Or ano ba yung chance na mangyari yung isang event? That is probability. Note that the probability of an event is always from 0 to 1, meaning hindi pwedeng maging negative at hindi rin pwedeng sumobra sa 1 yung probability of an event. The probability of an event, if its occurrence is certain, is equal to 1. Meaning, pag sure na tayo na mangyayari yung event, that is 1 or 100%. While the probability of an event, if its occurrence is impossible, is equal to 0. Meaning, kapag imposible talagang mangyari, walang chance, that is 0. And the sum of all the probabilities of all possible outcomes in a sample space is equal to 1. So kapag pinag-add mo lahat ng probabilities ng mga possible na outcomes doon sa sample space natin, dapat mag-equal lahat yon to 1. There are 3 types of probability. Yung classical, empirical, and subjective. When we say classical probability, it is the probability based on the assumption that all possible outcomes are equally likely and known beforehand. Ito yung mga probabilities na kahit hindi natin gawin, alam natin kung ano yung mga pwedeng lumabas. Like for example, rolling a die. Ano pa yung mga nasa die, di ba? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So alam natin ano yung mga possible na lalabas. Or tossing a coin. Ano ba yung nasa coin? Head or tail? Okay? So yun yung mga tinatawag na classical probability. What is the probability of getting a head when flipping a fair coin? So doon sa coin, ilan ba ang head? We have 1. And ilan ba yung possible na lalabas? Pwedeng head, pwedeng tail. So that is 2. So the probability of getting a head is equal to 1/2. What is the probability of rolling an odd number on a fair 6-sided die? So ano ba yung mga possible na lalabas? We have 1, 3, and 5. At ano yung mga nasa sample space? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So the probability of rolling an odd number is 3/6, or that is 1/2. What is the probability of drawing a face card from a standard deck of well-shuffled cards? So in a standard deck, there are 52 cards. 13 of which are diamonds, 13 are hearts, 13 are spades, and 13 are clubs. Okay? So in each of these shapes, meron tayong tatlong face card. Yun yung Jack, King, and Queen. So ilan ang Jack, King, and Queen sa isang deck of cards? So kung tigtatatlo, 3 times 4, that is 12. Over, ilan ba lahat yung cards? 52. Or that is now equal to 3/13. For the second type of probability, we have the empirical probability, and is determined by observing the relative frequency of an event occurring in a set of trials or experiments using actual data rather than theoretical assumptions. So ang pagkakaiba nito sa classical is based ito sa actual data. So for example, nag-observe ka sa kantin ng mga pumasok na students. So kung ano yung na-observe mo, doon mo i-compute ang probability. Or so for example, bumili ka ng bag of M&Ms. Kung ano yung nakuha mong bag of M&Ms, doon ka mag-base ng iyong i-compute na probability. So that is empirical probability. To get the probability of an event, just divide the number of times the event occurs in the observed data over the total number of trials or observations. Out of 50 die rolls, the number 4 appeared 8 times. What is the empirical probability of rolling a 4? So ilang beses ba lumabas si 4? 8 over ilang beses ba sila nag-roll ng die? 50. So that is now equal to 4/25. In a survey of 200 people, 120 prefer T. What is the empirical probability of preferring T? So we have 120 over 200, or that is now equal to 3/5. Out of 80 quizzes, 25 scores were above 90. What is the empirical probability of scoring above 90? So we have 25 over 80, or that is now equal to 5/16. And the last type of probability is the subjective probability. It is an estimate of the likelihood of an event based on personal judgment, intuition, or experience rather than on statistical analysis or historical data. So dito sa subjective probability, depende na lang sa'yo. Okay? Kung ano yung feeling mo. Okay? Kaya nga siya subjective. Well, if you consistently score high on quizzes, what is your subjective probability of making the director's list? So, pwede mong sabihin 100%, you are sure, okay? Or 1, or you may say 90%, okay? Or 9/10, yung chance na mapupunta ka sa director's list. Given that you saw two classmates often together at McDonald's, what is your subjective probability that they are in a relationship? Okay, so lagi mo nakikita yung dalawang kaklase mo nasa McDonald's, laging magkasama. So you may say, siguro sila, no? 80%, sure na ako na sila. Okay? With the teacher's tendency to give lower grades for late work, what is your subjective probability of getting a good grade on a late assignment? So alam mo na mas mababa yung binibigyan ng teacher pag late yung assignment mo. So ano yung subjective probability na maganda yung grade na ibigay sa'yo sa late na assignment mo? So mababa, like siguro 5/10 lang or siguro mga 3/10. Okay? Kasi nga late yung assignment mo.